All right, heading into week 8 of the fantasy football season, I am giving you my starts and sits at the running back position. Do me a favor, drop a like, subscribe if you like the content, and comment down below. Let me know who your toughest start is that you have to make this week. We have the Chiefs and the Chargers on bye. So as far as running backs, you won't have Clyde, you won't have Austin Eckler. I know that hits me in a lot of leagues. But let's start with the starts of the week. And I just want to throw an honorable mention out there. It's my belief that you don't trade for James Robinson on the last year of his contract if you don't plan to just run him into the ground. So for those people out there who might be curious how I stand on James Robinson, I think that you can start him. He's going to have an entire week here to, get to know the Jets system. And I just don't think that you trade for someone who doesn't have a long-term contract. You've already got Breece Hall coming back next year. I just feel like they traded for him and they plan to just use him and abuse him. So I don't love the matchup, but I think that you can play James Robinson. All right, my first start of the week is Ezekiel Elliott, honestly, or Tony Pollard. I'm not sure what's happening with Zeke's knee. We think it's fine. If Zeke plays and even if he doesn't, both ways, Tony Pollard and Zeke both can be started. This is a really good matchup versus the Chicago Bears. Chicago currently gives up the 8th most points to fantasy running backs. And we are hitting a point here with Zeke where 2 weeks in a row already, he's hit over 15 fantasy points, has had over 13 rushing attempts in both games, had 2 touchdowns last week versus Detroit. Now he faces Chicago. He could fall into the end zone twice again this week. And then you look at Tony Pollard, back-to-back weeks with at least 11 attempts. So this team has really established themselves on the ground. I like the matchup. I think both Pollard and Zeke are startable assets. With my second start of the week, I'm going to Miami. Let's talk about RAHEEM the Dream Mostert. He goes up against the Lions. Detroit currently gives up the 3rd most points to fantasy running backs. And RAHEEM has kind of had a revival of his career. I know he's 30 years old, but he has been the best running back. The speed is still there. The vision is still there. He's got the connection with Mike. And I really, really like this matchup for him. Since week 2, he has not played under 56% of the snaps. And since week 4, he hasn't played under 62% of the snaps. He's getting all the carries. And if anyone's going to score a rushing touchdown, it feels like RAHEEM is going to be the one. In fact, he actually had a receiving touchdown this last week versus Detroit where he put up over 20 points. Detroit is an incredible matchup. I'm looking to exploit that this week with RAHEEM the Dream Mostert. My third start of the week is someone coming off their bye week. That is Miles Sanders versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh currently gives up the 12th most points to fantasy running backs. So they're a very beatable matchup. And speaking of RAHEEM reviving his career, how about Miles Sanders? Someone that I was a very big advocate of buying in Dynasty on our Dynasty channel this offseason, has been extremely efficient for most of his career. And now we're finally seeing fantasy relevancy come for Miles Sanders. And, a lot of people's worries this year, well, what about Boston Scott? What about Kenny Gainwell? Since week 4 versus the Jags, Miles Sanders has been on the field over 62% of the time. On this offense that is so explosive with his skill set and that offensive line, he should be a start every week. I like this matchup versus the Steelers, and he's getting relatively involved in the air, but he's really dominant on the ground, extremely efficient as well. My fourth start of the week is Joe Money Bags Mixon. He plays the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland currently gives up the 4th most points to running backs. They have been shredded on the ground this year. There was a span about a week or so ago where they gave up 400 rushing yards in the span of 2 weeks. I mean, they're just getting dominated on the ground. And Joe Mixon, who has been pretty inefficient overall this year, has had a couple good games where he's come back with that efficiency. This offense is firing on all cylinders. They're going to Cleveland. I think they're going to try and really dominate on the ground in this game. And the good thing about Joe Mixon, which we haven't seen much in the rest of his career, is that he has a very, very safe floor through the air as well. Not a single game under 3 targets. And if you can get 3 targets every single game, 3 to 5 to 6, he gives you a very safe floor. So start Joe Moneybag Mixon. Finally got into the end zone last week, which is what we wanted to see on the ground. My 5th start of the week. Let's go to Buffalo. Let's talk about Devin Singletary. It's been up, it's been down for Devin, but I think that this is one of the up weeks for him. Very hard to predict, but I like the matchup. Green Bay gives up the 10th most points to fantasy running backs. And last week, Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson were able to be relatively efficient on the ground. Brian Robinson, not so much, but Gibson, who I think is more of the Devin Singletary comp here, was able to be very efficient on the ground. Last time out versus Kansas City, Devin Singletary had 17 carries for 85 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. I mean, he's had a game this year versus Miami week 3 where he had 11 targets. This is someone who's in an offense where when you have a matchup like this, you just can't afford to sit him. In my last start of the week, I wanted to kind of give an example of a desperation play for people out there who might be struggling with injuries or buys. I started Chuba Hubbard last week in one of my leagues, and I won. And I'm still waiting to see what is the go with his ankle. If his ankle, if he's not expected to go, you can start Deonta. But to be honest, like in a true desperation scenario, I think you can start either Deonta Foreman or you can start Chuba Hubbard. The matchup is versus Atlanta. Atlanta gives up a middle of the pack against running backs in fantasy. So I like both Chuba Hubbard and Deonta Foreman. Last week, Chuba Hubbard, he was dominating before he went down. But still, even in between there, Deonta Foreman had some very explosive runs. Actually, Deonta Foreman finished with 118 yards on the ground, averaging over 7.8 yards per carry. And Chuba himself averaged 7 yards per carry. These guys are the identity of this team moving forward. That's quite clear. It's going to be Deonta and Chuba. And purely off of volume, I think both of them are going to be startable assets. So if you need a desperation play, not the safest one, but I'll take one of these guys here depending on injuries. All right, my 3 sits of the week. Let's quickly go through these and hear what I'm going to say with this first one. The Chicago Bear running backs. I want to sit the Bear running backs versus the Cowboys, and that's purely because of the matchup. The Dallas Cowboys give up the 3rd fewest points to the position. They are a very good run defense. Montgomery last week was saved by a touchdown. If it wasn't for that touchdown, he would have had just over 6 points. Herbert, again, that screen touchdown really saved his week as well. Both of these guys are efficient runners. However, this is not the matchup that you want to chase unless there is clear volume. And I don't think either of these guys are really going to separate themselves on this team. My second sit of the week is A.J. Dillon. If you have him, you've been waiting for that season where A.J. Dillon's going to kind of come out and dominate. It certainly isn't going to be this game. He's been really disappointing pretty much since week 1. He's been a huge disappointment. Hasn't scored over 10 points since week 1. He's been a bust since then. And this isn't the matchup to chase that. The Buffalo Bills currently give up the 6th fewest points to the position. And my third sit of the week is Gus the Bus Edwards. I know you probably want to start him. He had a really good game last week, 2 touchdowns, pretty efficient on the ground, over 4 yards per carry. My issue in this game is that I think the Bucs are angry, and that is a good defense. You have to chalk up this Panthers game to everything in the Panthers was about let's rally together, let's show who we are, and the Bucs were caught off guard. I don't anticipate this defense being this bad again this week. It's a good defense against the run. They give up the 7th fewest points to the position, and I think this feels like a trap game to me with Gus, who, by the way, only played 36% of the snaps. This feels like a trap to me, so I'm not starting Gus Edwards. Why don't you comment down below? Let me know where you stand on these starts and sits. Huge love this week, and good luck.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLand fam.